Thank you so much, Frank. So I'll be presenting my screen now. Okay, here it is. Uh, do you see my screen? Okay, cool, cool. Okay, so once again, good afternoon there in Uganda, and good evening here in the Philippines. Welcome, and again, thank you so much, GDG UICT, for inviting me in this very nice, hopefully hopefully a good React study jam, right? So I hope that you guys be able to learn something and be able to kickstart your journey when it comes to building interactive web applications. Okay, so before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Ned Palacios. I am a software engineer based in Davao City, Philippines. I'm currently a software engineer at Better Team, which is based in Australia. So we are building hiring management software there. So I'm a software engineer there. And aside from that, I'm also a community builder. So I do even before when I was in GDSC, I was also a volunteer of multiple events here in my city, especially in the tech scene. And I'm also currently leading two organizations, one for the students and then one for progressive web apps. So I do have some experience in helping people and helping programmers in the local tech community scene. And as what Frank mentioned, I was also the former lead of GDSC UIC. It's not UICT, it's UIC. Uh, so I was the lead last 2022 to 2023, back then when it was Google Developer Student Clubs, right? So UIC stands for University of Immaculate Conception. It's also a local university here in Davao City. So yeah, and then I'm also an open source enthusiast, right? So code is my passion, and apart from my experience in the community, I also do contribute to projects and make projects that I feel that makes an impact as well. Projects that I do want people that do make a difference. So not just in building things that are closed, but really showing people how stuff works, right? And because of that, I am a proud father of 110 GitHub repos. So it's an endless stream of side projects, incomplete side projects. Yeah. Oh, and oh wait. Oh, okay. Okay, sad. Oh yeah. So and also lastly, um and just to relate my React experience. So my first React JS experience was way back 2017. So my first ever React JS version that I coded was 15.5.4. So it's like I was still 16 back then. Yeah, because I was really into web dev and all, and I was really curious about whatever's trending back then. So I really decided to try React as well, and that really paid off throughout my entire journey as a computer science professional. All right. Okay. And then, but before we start, right? If you want to check out the slides, especially if you want to access the code and the links, you can just check out at react-study-jam.talks.nedpals.xyz, or you can just scan the QR code if you like. Okay, so you can guys can follow properly even if you cannot if you have any issues with the Google Meet, so you can just access the slides immediately here in this link. Okay, so I hope you guys have already bookmarked the link, and later on just visit the link if you can. Okay, so I need a little bit of input from you guys. So take a look at this websites that I have shown in the screen. You probably used most of them, so if you can chat in, if you can send your message in the chat, what are these websites that I've shown here? Okay, so anyone? What are these websites that I'm currently presenting here in the screen? Like, what are these three websites that I've shown here? Okay, social media, that's correct. What specifically these websites? Okay, okay, cool. Thank you so much, Kenneth. So, you got it right. There's Facebook, there's Spotify, and then the bottom is Discord, right? It's not you're not gonna be familiar with this because it's in light mode. Okay, uh, sorry, it's in light mode, and it's not. And if it's in light mode, the Discord interface is not that kind of a like very familiar when it comes to light mode. So these three are Facebook, Spotify, and Discord. Now, thinking about the features earlier, so what are as Elijah has already answered, kind of answered the category, but what are the features do you see in this websites? Okay, like like what are the features in these websites that do you think in these platforms? Like, what does Discord do? What does Spotify do? What features does Facebook have? Anyone? Yeah, if you're very shy, just put your answers in the chat box. Okay. Okay. Uh, so yes, Elijah.
Um, the features for Facebook are for like communicating, adding and viewing friend list. Spotify for listening to music, podcast, and following your favorite artists. Discord, the same thing, communicating, asking questions, viewing updates.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you so much for your answer, Elijah. So these features that Elijah's mentioned were right, and as you can see, these features there is something in common to them, right? And the common between these features, playing music, sending messages, viewing updates, or posting messages, is that they are all interactive. Okay, so when we say interactive, oops, so when we say interactive means that the website isn't just a static document you read, right? You interact with it. Yeah, you can respond to user input, change based on user actions, allow users to manipulate content, as long as the user can be will be able to engage to the content in a way that goes beyond passive viewing. So, in order for us to identify what it means to be interactive, is that it needs to be dynamic. The content needs to be dynamic. When we say dynamic, it's changing every time. One of the best examples is news, right? Every second, there's always news. There's always a breaking news that appears, right? And that alone is the content alone, and that is changing, dynamic, okay? Second, it responds to your clicks and keystrokes. So when your mouse cursor or when your finger taps a button, it should also react. No pun intended, but it should also react to the corresponding actions. Okay. Third is you can navigate complex interfaces. So not just that interactive means you just need to click one button, but you also need to be able to click two or more or a combination of every interactable element that you can see. And you can also control what you see. So as what you've seen earlier, Spotify, you can control the music, you can control the volume. In Discord, you can control what content can you see, right? So being interactive means you have the power to control, you have the power to engage, and to be able to follow what is the user's intent. But this is the standard for web right now, right? In our world today, interactive web apps is actually the standard now. But way back when the internet is still in its infancy, it's not that like the same interactive web apps that we have experienced today. Okay, so back in the 90s and early 2000s, interactivity was a different story. Websites back then were mostly static pages. So static is the opposite of dynamic. So dynamic, earlier, as I've said, it's ever changing. While it's static, it means that it sits right there. It's not changing. Okay. And if you want something new, okay, it's still interactive. If you want to have the content to be changed, right? Let's say you want to have another set of content. Still, you have some degree of interactivity, but you are required to reload the page. Okay. So when we reload the page, you just interact with the browser, but not with the web page itself. So that's a different kind of interactivity. And again, as I've said, it did not change based on user input. So all you have to do is you just really have to work around on what is the features of the browser. Second is that everything was server-side rendered, requiring a full page refresh. So in order for us to interact, right, aside from just clicking the browser, because it doesn't really magically change the content. You just basically talk to the server. Let's say this one, yahoo.com. So let's say if you really want to have a new content to be shown to you in your computer, you just basically talk to Yahoo, say, hey, I want a new page for this. So you basically talk to you and say, and then Yahoo will give back the newest, the freshest content there, right? And that alone, that requires some communication involved. Unlike right now, where everything you can do, it can be done within your personal device. But back then, you are in the mercy of the servers that basically runs those websites in order to give you the content that you need in a dynamic manner. And user interactions also back then were limited to simple forms and basic scripts. So it's just like filling up a form, okay? Filling up contact pages, and then basic scripts, okay? And in order to have this kind of illusion of interactiveness, right? People back then were already using GIFs, okay? I'm saying it right. It's a GIF or it's a GIF. I don't know. I won't be debating about that. But basically, yes. Uh, Back then, if you really want a website that really stands out, that it's like full of life, you really have to make GIFs about it and simple effects like hovering, focus, all everything that is possible through CSS. And back then, there was this very trending HTML element. It's called marquee. So marquee is like you see in the news, the ticker, so the text that moves from right to left. Yeah, that was the hotness back then. Okay, way before every fad in the web dev, there's already the marquee, right? And that's the height of the technology. And especially in 2005, I guess, in 2010s, in order to get truly rich interactive experience, developers had to rely on browser plugins like Adobe Flash and Microsoft Silverlight. So these were powerful, but they were proprietary systems that created a closed ecosystem and required users to install extra software. Uh, I was able to catch this one because back then YouTube required YouTube the video player of YouTube back then was using Flash Player. Okay, and in order for you to watch YouTube, you need to install Adobe Flash. And then same thing as well with if if you are able to play the Flash games, Miniclip, Y8, they are all Flash games and they require Flash Player. So you have to install a Flash plugin for that. And that again itself, they are not like open standards, unlike today, right? Because they were created by Adobe, and then for Silverlight, it's Microsoft. So you really need to install extra software. They were a necessary step, but not the future of Open Dev. But in 2010s, it there was a major shift in the technology landscape. Not tech. So first is Steve Jobs announces the death of Flash on iOS devices. Steve Jobs created a letter that said that um, the iOS back then, the iPhone OS back then, won't be supporting Flash, and that really created shockwaves back then because it's really true that you can't really run Flash on mobile devices. Android was able to run Flash, but it was a bit buggy. It's laggy in phones. So it was really a seismic shift in terms of content creation in interactive content. Because Apple, since then, back then, Steve Jobs, he's already an icon. So whatever Steve Jobs is gonna say, he's truly making a shift, a seismic shift in terms of technology. Second, because of Steve Jobs um, like not supporting Flash anymore, right? In iPhones, there was the shift towards open web platforms became the highlight of that. So two of these, if you are if you can remember, HTML5 and CSS3, these technologies that you were able to learn right now, they become widely adopted open standards. Because back then, there was this thing called browser wars where Microsoft, Netscape, Mozilla have their own set of standards, right? And it really people were they were united when they released HTML5 and CSS3. So it really was game changing. And because of the release of Google Chrome, right? Way back 2008, in 2010, it became the most popular browser. Okay. But it's not just the most popular browser. It became the most capable web browser because you were able, because it has its own powerful JavaScript engine, which was the V8, right? And V8 was so powerful that you can create complex web applications, which led the doors of these frameworks that you are seeing right now. So Google Chrome had really had an impact in terms of web development. And these three stages were paving the way of building applications the new way. And something's brewing at Facebook, right? So at this exact time, Facebook was facing a huge problem. So their code base, especially for features like they're building the ads interface at that time for advertisers, they were having problems in terms of maintainability and performance. It's making it very slow and difficult to update. And there was this one Facebook engineer named Jordan Walk. He was assigned at the ads manager at that time, as I've said earlier, and he had an experiment. Okay, he was inspired. He experimented a new way to build user interfaces, but at the same time, he was also inspired by the way XHP, which was a library in PHP, which lets you write HTML and PHP. He was really inspired on how to build user interfaces around that paradigm that XHP built, which got him inspired. And thus, it's not React.js, but thus, Fax.js, the first name of React.js, was born. And this experiment would eventually become React. Now, what is React.js? React.js, officially, it's a JavaScript library for building UIs. So it's not a full framework that dictates your whole application structure, but it just focuses on the tool for one job. It's building the view layer of your application, and it does the job exceptionally well. So it was developed by Facebook in 2011 and open sourced in 2013. So it really allowed developers to create rich interactive web applications, and it's currently one of the most popular in-demand skills for web developers. Okay? So aside from HTML, CSS, and JS, React is one of these basic skill sets that you need to learn when it comes to building rich interactive web applications. So what problems does React solve? Okay, React was built to solve specific painful problems. First, it helps manage the complexity of components. This was the problem of Facebook that time, which got solved because of React. Second, because of maintainability, because we're able to break down the complexity right into reusable pieces, it also delivered performance by being smart about how it updates the screen. And because of that, it also makes our job as developers easier by providing a clear and predictable way to describe our UI. Okay? So that complexity into breaking it down into multiple parts, multiple sections of the UI, help the paradigm to make it more faster and more easier for developers to debug through the paradigm that React is giving. All right, so how does React do all of this? Okay, it boils down to these three ideas. First is components. You build your UI out of small self-contained pieces. So you don't need to there's one big blob or one big element that is in the long run can be complex and unmaintainable. Okay, so you can build this UI into small self-contained pieces: a button, a search bar, a profile picture, each in its own component. Then then snap them like together like Legos. Okay, so if you can remember Legos, these are blocks, right? And if you build small pieces with Legos, and then if you stack them all together, then you build this one whole big creation, right? Which you cannot believe that it was created in smaller sets of blocks. So similar to React, if you're creating smaller components and if you combine these all together, you're able to create a complex web application out of those small components that you have built. Okay. Second is state and props, right? So props are how you pass the data into a component to customize it. And state is its own private memory. So it's how a component remembers things like what you've typed into a search bar. And third is React does these things through a declarative user interface. So with a special syntax called GSX, which we're gonna be tackling later, we just describe what our UI should look like. We say, hey, show a list of these items. We don't manually create each one. We just create the end result, and React handles the how efficiently. So let's dive into the first idea, which is components and JSX that powers that. And before that, right? Again, if you're already in our slides, you can just visit this link. But if you are not, if you're just watching it right now, so just need to go to this link because the way I approach workshops is that each of these lessons, we're gonna be also be having a complementary coding. So along the way, each of these lessons, if we just coded it one by one, then in the end, you and I will be able to achieve and create uh, the website, the component. In this case, a React component. So that's how I approach it. So just if you're lost in a specific part, so you can just able to go back and then just check the code and then proceed again to where have you left back. Okay. So just go to tinyurl.com and just to show you what it looks like. So this is a StackBlitz application. That's why I don't need we don't have any additional setups required because you just basically just visit this website, this editor rather, and then you just basically start write what is in our slides. So you can just catch up without installing Node, installing Vite, and any of the dependencies that you are required to run with React. So our focus is just to build and never to set. Okay. But if you are not able to run it on your device, there's also a GitHub link here. Just visit in our GitHub page. I'll just show you here. This is our GitHub repo. Just fork it if you like, and then you can just run it on your device if you have already installed Node or whatever's dependencies there. Okay, and then the instructions is also written here. Okay, so do you guys have any concerns so far? Are you guys all good with our setup? Just thumbs up in our Google Meet if you are able to set up your on your device our development environment using the link that I have given to you. Okay, so we have one, we have two. Very good, guys. I hope the internet situation there is good because it's gonna be a very heavy application that's gonna load the entire workspace. But if you cannot follow, just bookmark the link later on, and or just bookmark the slides, okay, and then just follow step by step. Okay. So I hope you guys are able to catch up. Uh, But without further ado, so let's not waste our time, right? Anyways, just follow the slides. Just visit the slides, okay? Or yeah, the slides, uh, and then you'll be able to catch up. Okay, so let's proceed. The heart of React components is GSX. So it looks like HTML, and but it's actually JavaScript. Okay, so this lets us write our UI structure right next to our logic, which is incredibly powerful. If you hear GSX, okay, it automatically you hear React.js as well, because this was the first framework, I think, or not framework rather, but a library that you need to have a special syntax to write the UI that you want in JavaScript. Okay, when I first heard it, this one, I think I got I think it made me off a bit because like who writes HTML and JavaScript, right? Like you have to really separate these things. Like you have to separate the logic and then the view and then the presentation, right? But eventually it made sense as to why it's very nice, because you're able to describe the components, right? But we are able to write our UI structure in which it's in a more powerful way. Okay, and if you want to write the JSX files, then you really have to use the .jsx extension. Okay, not .js, not .ts, but .jsx. If you want to write HTML in JavaScript or JSX with this one. And this is how JSX looks. So it really does like HTML, just bolted on JavaScript. Okay. So in this case, you can create a variable element, and then it will just equate to the HTML, the JSX rather, equivalent of that hello world container. So that's really the concept of JSX. Now, while it looks like HTML, there are a few key rules to remember. Okay, so first it has tags, attributes, and children. So whatever you were able to learn in HTML, like the opening bracket, then the tag name, and then the attributes, and then closing bracket, and content, and then the closing tag. So you can still be able to use that in JSX, okay? Because it's just HTML in JavaScript. And then again, same with HTML, you can just nest tags inside other tags to build complex structures. And it must have a single root element, okay? So you cannot just easily write like two elements without one parent container. So you need to have a one parent container to have multiple elements. So in this case, if you don't have like, if you think that you really need to have no parent container, if you don't want to have a parent container in these elements, so we just have a fragment instead, which is just an HTML element with no tag name. So it's just opening bracket, close bracket, and then in the closing is like opening slash and then close. So just to be able to wrap multiple elements. But there are differences between JSX and HTML as well. Okay. First is that attributes are written in camel case. So camel case, small letters, it's just the first word of that word of the first the first word is just gonna be a smaller case, and then the succeeding words in it should be in capitalized case. So in this case, on click. So in HTML, you were able to use I think kebab case or snake case. Yeah, it's kebab case. If I can set kebab case. Yeah, it's kebab case. Where you need to use dashes instead to separate words. here you need to really have distinction by making one word small letter, one word lowercase, and then the rest, the succeeding words should be in capitalized cases. So in this case, on click in HTML is on dash click. In here, it's on, small letter on, lowercase on, and then click with a capital C. Similar with HTML4 is lowercase HTML, and then 4 with a capital F. You get what I mean. Is that there are some keywords in JavaScript and in JSX wherein you need to really uh, change. Like, for example, class. Class becomes class name because class is a reserved word in JavaScript. This one thing, this thing alone, really made me kind of dislike JSX before. But if you are getting used to it, okay, like not accidentally typing class, right, and you just type class name instead, and it's not an issue at all. But basically, if there are some keywords that are similar in HTML and in JavaScript, so really JSX really has to find other ways in order to name it. So in this case, class name. Even HTML4, um, in HTML it's just for, okay, the word for FOR, but in React in JSX you will need to type HTML4 because for is a keyword which is the loop. And the reason why it's so powerful again is because you can really embed any JavaScript expression inside curly braces. So variables, mathematical expressions, anything, any JavaScript expression that is supported, you can basically put it there and display it inside the curly braces. Now here's an example of oops. Here's an example of HTML and a JSX code side by side. Okay, so we're gonna have a quick side by side for this. So first is that here, if you can see, in HTML side we have the class container, and then the for and then with attribute of name, attribute value of name. While in JSX, as I mentioned earlier, because these two attribute names have a corresponding keyword in JavaScript, they are automatically being renamed in JSX. So in this case, it's class name, and then the for is HTML4, as I've said. When doing comments, we don't apply the HTML comment syntax in JSX, but instead we wrap the JavaScript comment inside the curly braces, right? It just evaluates it as a JavaScript expression. Then similar here, hello world, but because we cannot really embed dynamic expressions in HTML, in JSX you can just embed whatever value in there with the curly brackets, right? In this case, we just want to print the name variable. And then, yeah, but most of this, 90% of this is just HTML. So all of the understandings you have in HTML are not wasted. Okay, you can just transfer. Your skills are transferable here in React.js. Can you run JSX directly in a browser? Is it a yes or a no? For yes, just thumbs up. If it's no, just thumbs down. Okay, I want to hear your thoughts. Can you run JSX inside a browser? Like, can you run React.js? Okay, so many of you have thumbs up, but the answer to that is no. Okay, again, JavaScript, the JSX. Okay, you cannot really run. Okay, many people are now thumbs up. You can. It's too late. It's too late. Just kidding. Again, as I've said, JavaScript, XML or JSX is just an extension of JavaScript. It's not really an open standard. It's not really embraced by all browsers unless they adopted it, right? So for this one, Okay, browsers can only understand HTML, CSS, and standard JavaScript. And as I've said, this is just a syntax extension that the people at Facebook have created for this library. Okay. Now, in order for us to be able to code JSX and run it in the browser, we have this thing called a build tool. Okay, a build tool is mostly it was called Babel, some called Vite. So it acts like a translator in which the JSX code we have, it converts into a standard JavaScript code. Now in this case, if you can see the example here, we have a hello name H1 expression. And if we put it into a build tool like Babel, it then transforms it into a standard JavaScript call. Okay, so that's why you're able to write JSX and then run it in the browser is because of the build tool. Okay, that's why in our session for tonight, I have set up a project which has a build tool installed, which is Vite. So you cannot really write the entire code by yourself using the standard tools you have in your device. So yeah, so good. The good news for that is that once you're able to access it on your device, the link that I have sent to you, then you are good to go. So you don't need to set up anything with or any software. You can actually just visit the StackBlitz playground. Now let's talk about the first pillar, which is components. Let's think of them as reusable HTML tags you create yourself. They are just JavaScript functions, but with two rules. Okay. So to create a component, you really need the name of your component should be a capital letter, and it must return JSX. And once you define a component, you can also accept data via props. Later on, we'll tackle that. And then you can also put some method there, which is what we call state. Now, if you want to write a component, so this is how you write a component. Again, as I've said, it's just a capital letter and it must return JSX. So meaning JSX here is HTML. Okay. And if you really want to use the component, as I've said, this is just like custom HTML tags. So you just call it by using the bracket, angle bracket, and then the name of the component that you want to call, followed by a slash if your component doesn't have like any sort of way to put content in there, or just put a content and then the closing tag. But in this case, we just use slash and then the closing angle bracket syntax. So this is just basically just build your own HTML with components. Now, once you define a component, you can use it anywhere you want, as many times as you want. This is why the component system is a proven paradigm. Because you just basically write a small UI and then just put it everywhere, and it will just display it. And at the same time, it's the sake for uniformity as well. Okay, thank you so much, Frank, for the link. I forgot to put it in the chat. But yeah, if you want to check out and then try our project, just visit the link that Frank gave in the chat box. Now let's go with our first lab activity. Okay, so our first activity is to create a skeleton of our to-do list using JSX. Okay, our goal for tonight is to build a to-do list app in our StackBlitz playground, or in our project that you just cloned. Okay, so if you are in the slides right now, in the link, if you have visited the link, I'll just link it here again. if you're able to access the slides, just go to slide 20, and then you're able to. I just can show you here. You can just copy paste the code here or interact with it. Okay, so this is really cool. So let's start with our uh, lab activity. So we'll go here in our StackBlitz playground, and as you can see here, we just go to the source folder and then in the app.jsx folder. Okay, just to give you a glimpse of what the project structure looks like here. So we have here the main.jsx. So this is the one that really renders the our component to the browser. So we have here the create root, and then followed by which HTML element where do we put this specific component, then followed by the render call and this one. And then we also have the app.jsx, which is the only thing that we're gonna be touching for tonight's or this afternoon's session. And then we also have here the API in which more I just put it there so that you just be able to focus on what's really important in our session for today. Today, this afternoon, rather. Okay, and then we also have the CSS as well. So you don't need to style your page. Okay. So as you can see here, we have also the preview here, which is the my to-do list. And now we just basically replace this one with the one that we have that we have seen in the slides. Okay. So let's start. Erase this one. Just I'll find. Okay. I hope it's easier to see now. Font size 16. Yeah, that works. Okay, that works. Okay, so let's start with the main tag. So again, if we want to write a component, we need to have one parent element here. So in this case, we have the main element. So we just do main, open bracket, open angle bracket main, and then closing bracket, and then followed by the closing tag main. And then inside the main, what we need is a form. So in our to-do list app, we need a form, we need the title, and then we need the list of to-do list, to-do items here. So first is we're gonna be coding the form, HTML form. We'll just create a structure for now, and then we'll add the attributes later. And then we add the div, which is just a field item. So in this case, new item, the input type text. Okay, good. We'll just add this one here, form row, and then new item form. Now, before that, I have to put a button below the div, which, and if we save this one, okay, I'll have to reload this. Okay, good. So if you see this one, then you're now able to render our form properly. Now next is we're gonna be displaying the title and the list. So for the title, we just do an h1 tag with the class of header, and then below is the list. First this one, and then okay. Then we render one list in which it has, oops, it has a checkbox, and then the to do item. Then after that, followed by uh, the delete button, btn, and then for the delete button, there's a special styling for this. It's btn danger, and yeah, there we go. So we are able to render already our basic um, structure for our to-do list item. So did you guys catch up? Did you guys were able to render your first ever component, React component, with our basic structure? If you are, just thumbs up. I'd like to. I'm happy to see your feedback or your thoughts. Okay, that's good. Okay, so once you're able to write the first basic structure for our React, our first ever React component for to-do list app. Now let's go back here and let's proceed. And in order for us to have this, to make it more interactive, then let's proceed now to add some state. Okay, oops. So state. Now currently our app is static, but to make it dynamic, we need a second pillar for this, which is a state. State is simply the component's memory. So it remembers things that can change, like the text in an input or a list of items. Okay, we use a special function called useState to create it. So useState is a function that is built into React, in which are able to set the variable for this. Now, the most important thing to understand is when you update a piece of state, okay, React will automatically rerun your component's code and update the screen. So this is the core of interactivity of React. Now, if you there's already basic JavaScript variables, right? Like why need to use a special state function in order for be able to update our UI in React in a reactive manner. Okay, and that's because again, if you read in our slides, so when state changes, React automatically renders the component. With standard JavaScript variables, and on the other hand, React doesn't have a way for them to track if a certain variable is changed or if a certain variable is updated outside the component. So with useState, React is able to track what are the variables, what are the state in each of the component, and then React will be able to manually re-render the component if there is something, if there's a specific part or this specific state variable that is updated through the useState. Okay, sorry. Okay. Now, before we proceed to our next lab activity, we're gonna be breaking down the useState hook or the useState function in React. So it's a function that you call to add a piece of memory to your component. So it's a built-in React hook that lets you hook into React features like state. Now, for the useState, it returns an array with two elements. First is the state value. So if you see in our example, we have the count example here. Then we also have the setter, which is the one that lets you update the state of the value of that state. Okay, so in this case, we have the set count, and then in the button, we see here that if you click the button, you are able to update the specific value of that, which is count plus 1. And we use array destructuring, so we're able to extract properly what is the getter, the current value, and then the setter. Okay, you can call it as many times as you need for different pieces in one component. Okay, so that's a state. And then again, okay, sorry, I forgot. There's also another thing that you need to remember before we proceed to our next lab activity. So in order for us to again to render list, again, because Java's JSX is just JavaScript HTML on JavaScript, then we are able to display a dynamic list of items by using the map method and not the for loop. Okay, uh, for loop is a statement, whereas a map is a function that you can just put it as an expression. So for each item in the data array, we return a JSX element. So as you can see in our example here, if you want to be able to render a list of numbers in an li tag, so you just basically just call numbers.map. Numbers is our array variable here, and then map it to become JSX. This case, the li tag, and then the value, which is the number, and then closing tag. Now, one thing is that you also, in order for you to render list, you need a key prop for this, because React does not, because you're rendering list, right? And there are some cases in which you're able to render multiple instances of that list. So for React to track which ones are updated, which ones are need to be rendered. So for the for the for the list rendering, rather, you need to have a key prop for this. So the key prop is like an identifier in which React will be able to track through that specific identifier. And if that specific identifier updates, then it's just they can just easily immediately update that specific part of the code with this one. It's a good a good identifier, a good indicator for React to where to add or where to remove, and in order to be efficient in terms of updates. So let's go with our next lab activity, which is to render a list from a state. Okay, so as you can see here in our code, so we are introducing two new state variables. First is where this is for our form, and for our second state variable, this is when we want to display a list of items in a dynamic manner, or in a very it's a dynamic manner. Okay, and then we also have a function inside the component in which you're able to add the specific to-do item into our to-do state. Okay, so let's go back to our StackBlitz playground. So first is we need to create two state variables first. First is the new item. So for this one, you just do const and then the array expression, and then the new item, and then set new item, followed by an equals, closing bracket, followed by the equals, then use state. And then here inside the use state, we can provide what is the default value for this. So since this is for the new item, we can just insert a for the list of that new item, for the text rather for that new item, just basically provide an empty string. But before that, we also need to also import use state for this. So go to your at the very top and then just do import curly bracket use state closing curly bracket, and then from React. So this should be the syntax when we want to implement the use state function from React. Okay, and then back again to our code. Then let's introduce another variable called to-dos. So to-dos, set to-dos, and then Still, same thing. Okay. So here, since we are gonna be storing the list of to-do items, our default variable here is the the empty array. Now, once you're able to set a state or create the state variables that we have mentioned in our lab activity, then let's proceed to creating an event handler for this. So what is an event handler? So every time when you press a button, when you want to submit something, I guess in the server or within just the app, then it triggers an event. Okay, and in order for us to be able to to do some actions, then we need to create a function that will be used to trigger a specific uh, action or specific event. So in this case, we just need to create a function that will be triggered once an item is submitted. Okay, so let's create a function below. So it should and name it handle submit. Now it will be this function will have one parameter which is e, which gonna be the information stored in that event. Now inside that function, first we have to call in event prevent default. Now why is this very important? This is because when we don't add this code, it will trigger a full page reload. So instead of us being able to just add items, it will reset the page and reload the page instead, which goes back to it's gonna be empty again. Okay, so we're gonna be preventing that default for in order for us to submit the items that we want in our app. Okay, and then below. So now, since this is a function that adds the to-do item into our to-dos state variable, so let's call in our set to-dos. So set to-dos is again our function that we can use to update our current to-dos variable. Now inside this parentheses, we can access the previous value of the current to-do here by making it a function. So in this case, we are able to access now the current to-dos, the current value of the current to-dos variable or state. And then from there, we'll just need to return what is the new value of that to-dos variable. So in this case, we just need to put the existing value of our current to-dos, and then below is our new to-do item. So in this case, we'll just supply an object, and then the current length. So if you have 5, the ID here should be 6, and then the text, and then new item, and then whether if it's completed or not. So this should be the structure of our to-do item. We should have an ID, a text, and a completed. The ID later will be very useful when we render our list. And then after you are able to update the to-dos, right? Either set to-dos. No, it's annoying, set to-dos. But we can now just clear the new item by just supplying an empty string. So if we're going to explain this function, so basically once the form is submitted, okay, we will receive an event, and then we need to prevent that to trigger a full page reload. And then below is we need to add our new to-do item here with our set function. And then once you're able to update our to-do list, then we can just clear the new item field that we have just inputted here. Okay, so I hope that is you're able to comprehend that one. Now, how are we going to use this one? So let's go with our next part, which is to use that, to apply that one. So in our form, as you can see, we'll just add a new attribute. We'll call it on submit, and then followed by an equals. And then since this is we can reference the function, we can use the curly braces for this. And then we'll just reference the name of the function. Okay. And then here, once the form is submitted, it will trigger this function. Yeah, right. Okay. Now, next is we're gonna be having what's the next part for this? The next part for this is that we should be able to input the new item text for this. And in order for us to be able to use our text box for this, we have to connect our text box into our new item state variable. Now, in order for us to be able to edit and to add or to update our new item variable, similar to our form, we'll just need to hook two attributes for this. So first is the value, and then still a JavaScript expression. We just need to reference this one, and then just type in new item. And then the second one is in order for us to observe the changes as we type in our text box, then we'll just hook in our on change attribute or prop. And similar here, again, we can just make a function below this one, or we can create a function inside this one. Since this is a JavaScript expression, okay, let's make an anonymous function here. So for clarity, I'll just put it here so you guys can see. And then we'll go back to our on chain. So now we'll just create an anonymous function by supplying a function that's receive an event, and then followed by just calling the set new item. Now, what value are we gonna be supplying inside our set new item? So the key thing here is the current value of our text box. And in order for us to access the current value or the current text that's inside our text box, we need to use the one here, which is the E. Okay. So inside our parameter, we just put E dot, and then the target. Target here is the text box. And then we are now to access the value, which is dot value. Okay. So if we save this one, so if we type in here, there's still no change. There's still no changes yet in terms of how are we able to add, right, as we type. But if we click the add button, okay, so I'll have to reload. Okay. So as it disappears, right? Because we are not able yet to display the current list of to-do items. So because our data here is still static, okay? So our next task here is to render the current list of to-do items using the rendering list that we have mentioned earlier. Okay. So let's comment this one because we're gonna be using that later, and it will disappear here. And then below, we'll create a JavaScript expression. We'll just call the to-dos here, since to-dos is an array. An array can be mapped, can be looped. So we'll use one, and then we'll just call in dot map. And then inside that, the map method, we'll just supply a function. So for this to-dos, the singular of to-dos is to-do. And then, as mentioned earlier, it should return a JSX. So we'll just copy this one. Okay, that's cool. And then we need to have some modifications here in order for us to render what's already inside our to-dos variable. So first is we have to replace our item one with a dynamic expression. So in this case, we'll just mention the to-do here. So if we save this one, and if we type this one, oops, test. Okay, it disappeared. Okay, so yeah, you've seen here, we haven't supplied a key prop yet. So in order for us to fix that issue, we just need to add a key and then the ID. Okay, so if we try to add this one again, oh, oh it's not. Ah, right. Ah, yeah. Sorry, my apologies. So to do is not really a string, okay? So my bad. It's an object remembered as we remembered. So and React cannot render objects for this. So we need to really it can only render strings, numbers, booleans, but never the complex data structure. So for this one, since we are making a mistake here, and since this is an object that has a text in it, so we need to reference the to-do.text here. And if we try to add this again, yeah, it works already. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The next one is we need to we need to also react to the changes when we click the checkbox. So similar to our text box, okay, but this time, in order for us to check if the checkbox is checked, we'll just call in the check prop and then followed by to do, and then we have here the completed, right? So we'll just call in completed. Okay. But you cannot click it yet because it is tied to that specific value. So that's all good for now. We'll just clear this code. And then later, as we go on with our next lab activities, we are able to make it fully functional with the delete and then the check. Okay, let's go back. So this should be the end result for this. Okay, so let's proceed to our props. Now our app works, but all the logic is in one big component. Okay, to make it cleaner, we'll break it into smaller components. But how does a child component tell the parent to change the state? So this is where props come in. This is short for properties, and this is how a parent component passes down to a child component. So in this case, in our example here, we just supplied let's say a custom function here, or let's say a name if you're creating a component that provides custom values. And in our component, in order for us to access this one, we just create a parameter called props, and we are able to access what is provided in our instance of that component. So in this case, on custom click, and it can also access the on custom click. So this includes strings, arrays, objects, and even functions, as you can see here. And this makes components configurable and reusable. So if you've seen earlier our HTML buttons where you can supply, or in the text box where you can supply the on change and then the value. So those are props in React world, but in HTML it's called attributes. Okay. And now in our next lab activity, as I've said earlier, we'll just need to add the toggle and then the delete functionality of our to-do. Let's go back. All right. So now our next task is we need to implement the toggle to do function and then the delete function. So we were going to create two functions for this, which is the toggle to do and then the delete to do. So below in your handle submit, just create a big space for our two new functions. Okay. And then the first one is we're gonna be creating a toggle to do function first. So toggle to do has two parameters. We have the ID and then the completed. The ID here is referencing the ID of our to do, and then the completed value is whether or not that specific to do item is completed or not. And it's just simple. We just need to call our set to do's here, set to do's. And then similar to previous, we just need to um, access the current to do's value, and we'll just need to return an updated version of current to do's, wherein we just need to map, okay, and create a special value for that specific to do item. So in this case, if our ID is similar to the one that we have provided, this is the one that we're going to give back to our toggle to do, and then just copy our previous to do, then mark what is the value of completed. The rest we just need to return as is. Okay, so basic, just basic. That's just basic manipulation of value. Now let's go outside and create a new function again. It's called delete to do, and we just need to apply an ID. Okay, and similar to what we did in toggle to do, we just need to call set to do's, and then we just gonna need to access the current to do's and return a filtered version of that current value by using dot current to do's dot filter, and we can access specific to do, and it will show all the to do items except for that specific ID that we are trying to delete. Okay, so toggle to do, delete to do. Let's proceed to our code, our JSX code, and let's go first to our toggle functionality. So I'll put a space here. Okay, and in order for us to again change the value of that checkbox, so similar to our text box here, to our checkbox, similar to text box here, we're gonna be using on change. So we'll just call on change, and then we'll just call in our toggle to do. So again, we have ID and then the completed, right? So for the ID, we'll just reference that to do that ID. And then for our completed, similar to our text box as mentioned, we can also access that specific current value of that checkbox using e.target and then followed by checked. So you're going to see a pattern here when it comes to interacting with input elements. So if you want to get value, okay, so there's the value here. And if you want to get the current value of that checkbox, it's going to be checked. Okay, so it's checked. Save. And now, if we're going to test this one, okay, so it's, or what are we missing here? I check. You just reload. Test. Okay. If you are not able to make it work, just reload the StackBlitz. I don't know why it's not auto reloading, but just reload the browser side, the preview side. And if you're able to check it now, it should work. Okay. And then now let's implement our delete functionality. So similar to our add button here, we did not add that button. Similar to our input elements rather, we can just put in and say, when we click this button, one click, uh, we can just create, you can just create an empty function that calls in delete to do and then our to do ID. Okay, so if we save this one, it should delete the to do item. So I hope you're able to catch up with this. Okay, let's proceed back to our slides. This should be our code. So there's a delete to do and then the toggle to do. Okay. Are you guys all good so far? Are you able to do your task? I know you've been annoyed already with the word to do, but yeah, we need to move on to our next lesson, which effects. Okay. Supposedly I shouldn't supposed to show what a side effects is, but given how common this kind of function or feature here in React, because side effects is really it's going to take a while for you to understand how it works, but I'll try my best to show to you what a side effects is. So far our component logic has only been calculating the JSX to render. And then so far, we've able to update the UI just by clicking, typing, or checking our UI. But what if we need to do something that reaches outside our component, like fetching our data or from a server or anything that does not require a manual intervention? So in our case, saving our to-do list to the browser storage. So these are called side effects. Okay. Side effects are anything your component does that affects something outside of itself. By something outside of itself, so meaning to say it can be changes to the data given, to the props, to the state itself, or anything that's not, again, what I've said, does not require manual human intervention. So it's a side effect of rendering. So whenever we update something, okay, triggers a side effect. There's going to be a side effect when we want to update. Common side effects include, it sounds like a medicine, right? Fetching data from API, setting up subscriptions. So if you're going to be building a chat application, so there's going to be changes. There's going to be, you're going to be listening to data, to the updated data, so subscriptions. Or if you're going to be dealing with, in this one, manually changing the DOM, we're going to be dealing with something that is outside of React's control, React.js control, then you're going to be doing the side effects inside this one. Or in this case, in our next activity, saving the data to our local storage. And for this, in order for us to be able to utilize their side effects feature, again, React does provide a function called useEffect or a hook called useEffect to handle these actions cleanly. Now, the useEffect, as I've said, it's going to be tricky at first, but this is a hook for running side effect code in response to component renders. Okay, so it takes two arguments if you see not our code right now. The first is the function that contains a side effect code. So this is what we call the callback to this. So this is the function that will, this is the argument that React will gonna be executing whenever something changes. And then there's also a this thing called dependency array that tells React when to rerun the effect. By dependency arrays, when the dependency array is empty, so the effect runs only once when the component first mounts. So this is usually a perfect when you want to run a code and when you want to update something inside the component, but you only want to update it once, okay? But if you want to frequently update it, right? Like let's say you want to rely on the value of count, okay? You want to rely on the value, in this our case, the list of items, the list of to-do items. Then we can just mention it or reference it inside our dependency array, okay? However, you can also omit the dependency array. You can just provide the function for this and without the array list, right? And that will trigger the effect every time it renders something, which is definitely not advisable, okay? Unless you know how to, you're doing you are uh, unless you're doing something, okay? You know what you're doing. Now let's gonna be applying our use effect in our fourth lab activity. So let's go back here. And our goal here is that we need to save our to-do list in our local storage, because if we try our application right now, let's say test 1, test 2, and then check for some random text. If we're gonna be reloading this one, our to-do list will disappear because we have no way of storing what is the current to-do list inside our device. Okay, and in order for us to do that, we'll need to access our local storage, which is a good way, which is one of the ways where you can store the data inside the computer, inside your device without or it's like a database per se, a mini database where you can store the data and it will persist whenever you reload. Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. So let's first we need to change the initial state of our to-do items. Remember the use state here. We need to replace the empty array with the ones in our local storage. So for this one, we need to replace this. We need to clear, and then we'll need to make a function expression, an anonymous function expression. And then inside the function body, we need to access our to-do list of items. So this is our local value, local storage, that items. And in order for us to get the current list of items, we just need to call local storage followed by dot get item, and then followed by which entry you want to put items. And if there's no to-do list item is stored, again, we can just return an empty array. Or else, since get item returns a string, okay, so we need to process the value first. We don't just return the local value immediately because it's gonna be string and it's gonna mess up the way we manipulate our state. So we need to parse it with JSON. So if you know JSON, it's a structured data language in which a JavaScript array can be converted to JSON string. So we just need to extract that and convert it back to a JavaScript array. So we just need to return JSON.parse, then the local value. And here, we can now assume that the value here when we JSON.parse is already a JavaScript array. So our default value for our use state should be an empty array if it's not present, or if it's present, the JavaScript array value of local value. Okay. So it doesn't change everything. It doesn't change anything yet because we haven't saved our to-do list inside our local storage. So now that's our next task. So in order for us to save our to-do list inside our local storage, then that's where we can utilize our side effects. So below these functions, we'll put use effect and then just an empty function value. Okay, so make sure to import use effect in your application. But in this case, if you are typing and then just enter use effect, it should automatically import the use effect in your application. So going back, use effect and then empty function, anonymous function. And don't forget, okay, so which variable are we gonna be trying to track when it comes to this? It's gonna be the to-dos variable, right? The state variable. So we need to declare that this side effect, it should track only the to-do list items, which in this case, every time the to-dos list item value is updated, it should trigger this side effect. Okay, so that's why we are using use effect for this, so that we can every time we need to save, it can just observe the changes and then automatically saves it in our local storage. Now inside our function, we just need to call local storage dot set item. So what is the name again of our local to-do list item? So it's items, right? We just need to copy and then our parentheses, followed by inside the parentheses, the name of our to-do list item entry. And then the second value for this is, again, since we cannot store JavaScript arrays inside the local storage, since it's expecting a string rather, so we're gonna be converting our JavaScript array into JSON. So earlier, I hope it's gonna make sense now. So earlier, it's string to JSON, a string to JavaScript array. Here, it's JavaScript array to JSON to string. So in order for us to do that, we just need to JSON that parse, and then followed by stringify rather. Sorry. So JSON that stringify, and the data that we're going to convert into a string, which is our to-dos. This one. We just need to copy this. Okay. So once we reload this one, we'll try to add a to-do list again. So add a to-do item again. Hello. Okay. Now, if we're going to reload this one, it should persist our to-do list item. So just because we have provided a side effect in which it observes the changes of our to-do item, then it automatically saves them back to the local storage. And once the browser or once React loads our application, it then loads what is available, which is a local store, the existing one, or just an empty array through our default value in our use state. Okay. So I hope you guys were able to catch up with this one. So let's go back. And now, let's tackle conditional rendering. So as I've said earlier, being interactive means you're able to control the content that you want to show or do you want to see in your device, right? And in React, in order to control the content, we just use conditional rendering. So conditional rendering is you often want to show or hide UI based on a condition. And for this, you just basically use standard JavaScript logic directly inside your JSS. What it means is that the curly brackets that we've used earlier to display a value or to render a list, we can just use this one again to conditionally render our elements. Now, there are more than one way of doing this. The common patterns include the logical end. Oops, sorry. Uh, it should show both here, but one way is logical end, which is this one. So this one, this is what we call short circuiting. So for example, if the value is truthy, meaning the value is assumed to be true, then the second part, this one, will be automatically displayed. But if this value is false, then it won't show this specific element. Okay, so render this, and only if this is true. That's one way. The other way is what we call ternary operator. If we can highlight this one. So the ternary operator it's like a shortcut if else statement here, with which it contains the condition, followed by the question mark, and followed by the true branch, then colon for separating, and then the false branch. So in this case, if this is logged in, we need to show this one. If it's not, then it will show please log in text. Okay. Another one is again, similar to for loops, you cannot really add an if statement inside the JavaScript expression in our curly brackets, because an if statement is a statement, right? But you can still use this one inside, as long as it's not within the curly braces that as I've mentioned, and it's gonna be just returning a JSX. Okay, so if you don't have like a special, if you don't like display something way before sample for divs, right? You can just return the JSX immediately, and then through the if statement, right? So that's one way. Another way of rendering the content using conditional rendering. Let's apply that in our fifth lab activity. In this case, we're gonna be showing a helpful message when the to-do list is empty. So in this case here, we need to show if it's empty. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's go with our playground, in our StackBlitz playground. And let's go way before here our UL element. So let's put a space in between. Okay. Oh, okay, wait. Sorry. We need to put rather the content inside the UL list. Okay, so here, let's put an empty space between the UL and then our to-dos rendering code. And we just need to, again, insert a JavaScript expression in which, as I've said, we'll just show a message if it's empty or not. And to do this, we'll use the short circuiting, the logical end operator, to tell to React that if it's empty, the length of to-dos is 0, then end, and then what's the content we're going to display. In this case, just a list item that says no to-do items found, or just any text that indicates that the to-do list is empty. In this case, to-do list is empty. So if we save this one, we're going to reload. If we're going to delete this, it should show the content that we're trying to show if it's empty. But if we're trying to add something like test, then it will disappear because the to-do items or the to-do list already has one item. So if there's a one item, it should not show it. Pretty simple. One thing I forgot is I forgot to add a list here. Right. I was wondering why the CSS for the list is ugly. We forgot to add the list class here. So it should be nice now. Okay, nice. That's very simple. We just displayed an empty text if it's empty. And if there's already an item, it should disappear. Go back. Now, that's pretty much it. Okay. So you're able to create a to-do list from scratch. So in our tutorial, we are able to create components with GSX. We're able to store what is our current memory with the state, and we're able to render list, your props, and then side effects. And we're able to conditionally render UI elements. Now, for the magic, why is this so fast? Why is this our changes when we click a button, when we do something, it already um, changes or appears in our script. So let's walk through it. First is that state changes. Let's say adding a to do, clicking delete button, clicking the checkbox, right? Every interaction we have, as long as we connect the state variables in there, it will trigger a state change. Okay. So once we trigger a state change, okay, React doesn't immediately touch the real screen, meaning to say HTML or the DOM itself. If you are able to remember the DOM in your HTML, if you're learning HTML, because manipulating the DOM, the HTML DOM, is very expensive. So instead, it creates an updated. It's like creating a copy of a DOM of the structure of that website or that web app. It creates an updated blueprint of your component in memory. So this is what we call the virtual DOM. Okay, so it's just a copy of the HTML DOM, but it's made more easier to manipulate and then send back the changes in our screen. So this is the key step. Okay, we need to compare and find difference. So because now we have a structure or a way for us to properly and to properly manipulate the structure of our web app through the virtual DOM, we can now compare the old version and the new version if there's any changes in it. Okay. And this is the fast part of React, in which this is not just the JSX and then the virtual DOM. The key thing about React is that we are able to create complex web applications is because of the algorithms that the Facebook team have implemented here, which is what we call the diffing algorithm. So diffing means comparing side by side the old and the new, and then we intersect it. We just basically just a Venn diagram, right? Like what's the common we just retain, but what's different between the two, what's different in the new version, it should be incorporated in our current structure. Okay, so that's where the magic of React happens. And if we are able to identify which exactly that needs to be added or to be removed, so in this case we add a to do, and sorry, when we added it to do, it will render a list item, right? So the list item is the difference between the old and the new, and that list item will be sent to the current version, and it will update the real page or the real content of that. So instead of recreating the entire page every time you interact with something, so again, it just runs a diffing. It just compares which is different, which is not, and then what are those that is gonna be removed, and what are those elements gonna be added, should be added in the current, and now the new version of that will be sent to back to the DOM, and it will render the real page. So the whole process is called reconciliation, and it what makes React feel so instantaneous. Now let's take a moment to look back at everything we've covered. Okay, so you went from zero to building a complete interactive application. Here we are able to understand what this GSX means, what its component means, and state, and then the rendering the list, props, side effects, forms, and conditional rendering. So we're able to cover that in this workshop. And if you're able to, if you were able to complete this one without any problems, and I would say congratulations. It's a massive achievement. No? So pat yourselves the back for being able to follow our workshop, right? And from there, it, as I've said, there are lots of things that you still need to learn if you want to master React. Okay, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are lots of things that you can explore. So if you want to learn, if you want to learn further React, you can explore our component libraries. If you want to create multi-page applications, then you can explore a library like React Router. And if you want to, if you are gonna be creating an application that's gonna be complex with state, if you're gonna be managing complex state, then there are things like Zustand, Redux, right? And if you want to make your application manageable in the future, then you're able to learn more by creating custom hooks. Okay. And in this tutorial, uh, since we're using Vite, okay, you can learn now to build real projects, real React projects, and you'll be able to work locally using our project that we have provided, or through the command that is in here, which is Vite. And if you have npm already installed, you can just run it in your terminal, and it will just guide you through the process on which framework you're going to be using. In this case, React. If we're going to be JavaScript or TypeScript, or if you have something to add more, and it will generate you a React application already without you setting up manually. So it's incredibly fast and it's easy to get started. So there are still lots of ways you can learn React through this journey is shown to you. So the web, because React again is one of the most popular skills when it comes to web development, the web is full of old React tutorials. There are lots of resources that you can try to read, whether it's reading or just watching, or if you want to be similar to this one, gonna be learn along or like use audiobooks, then there's a treasure trove of resources that you can use when you want to learn React. But these are the links that you can try. First is the React Dev Docs. So I can show to you. So this is the official documentation of React.js itself. You know, it's giving examples here. But if you want to dive deep to this one, you can just click Learn React, and then it also has its own tutorial for this, right? And some tips like describing the UI, interactivity, managing state, or if you want to dive deep to this, if you want to learn about the documentation of its API, like the use state or the use effect, you can just look at the reference. So it's the documentation here is it's gonna be helpful if you want to learn more about React. But this is something also that you want to bookmark as well when you want to learn more, because that's the official documentation, and the Facebook team is also updating it constantly. And also the slides as well, and then our StackBlitz playground too. And if you want to learn more about the dot map, the structuring that we have discussed earlier, as these are standard JavaScript features, you can just check out the MDM web docs. If you can give you an example, green map, as you can see, we are being guided in our Google by MDM web docs. So you can have some example, can see the examples here on how to use array map, or let's say in this case, array destructuring. Is there destructuring here? Yeah, this one. Yeah. So you can learn more about that one if you're very interested in uh, learning into JavaScript, advanced JavaScript. You can try that one in the MDM web docs. Okay. And with that, I'd like to answer any questions that you might have about React, web development, or anything we've covered today. Thank you all so much for your time and participation. And it was a pleasure being with you today. Feel free to connect with me online. So I have a link tree here. And I love to see what you build with React next. So thank you so much.
What are the key JavaScript concepts that are used in React? Because I'm seeing loops, functions.
Okay. The key JavaScript concepts you're gonna see when you're gonna be using React is, of course, first variables, functions, especially like the normal functions, the anonymous functions, the arrow functions as what they've called, and then the loops. But this one it uses the dot map, as I've said, and also the conditional statements like the ternary operators and the if statements. So those are the most frequently used concepts in React. Apart aside from that one as well, as I've said, the destructuring, in which that variable you can extract which values, which is very useful earlier in the use state. So those are um, things that you need to keep in mind when you need to learn React. But if you have already learned to use JavaScript, if you have already the fundamentals, it should just be very normal to use. Just gonna be a normal JavaScript project. It's just that it has HTML in it. Yeah. I see we have already 10 people down. So if you have any questions, guys, just feel free. I'd love to share my answers to you. Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. Again, I'd say thank you so much for having me here. Even if it's already almost midnight. Yeah, but yeah, I hope you guys are able to learn something. And as what Frank have said, right? Um, you have you should really need to be learn more about the fundamentals, because again, because this is what I am observing when it comes to learning web development, is that whatever is the hottest product or the hottest thing that is trending right now in the web development world, people will just jump into it without having the fundamentals. So if you don't, if you are not that kind of feel that React.js is hard, probably you don't have enough fundamentals yet in JavaScript and HTML to so you need to really learn more, and then you go back again to React.js, and then hopefully that will the concepts that is explained to you will be much more clearer to you. So again, I'd like to advise everyone to just continue to learn, just continue to master all the foundations of building a web app, and sooner or later you'll become like me. Okay, you'll become you'll become the person who will be conducting the workshop next time. And I hope I won't be you won't be forced to to sing. You won't be forced to sing, so you'll be able to conduct the workshop. Anyways, just kidding. Just continue to learn, guys, and you'll be able to reach the level that you'll be able to create impactful products, just like what GDG, your local GDG on campus chapter is spearheading on. So yeah, thank you so much and congrats. Yeah, I don't have WhatsApp. We don't have WhatsApp. We have WhatsApp here, but I don't use it. Yeah, sorry. You can just chat. You can just connect to me with me on LinkedIn, or so you can just click on this Linktree link. You can just check out. Just follow me. Let's chat. You just follow me on GitHub or Twitter. I'm everywhere except WhatsApp. I'm sorry. Soon, soon. Okay. Thank you so much.